Hi friends, and welcome to my weekly live stream about the Uno platform. My name is Jérôme Laban. I'm the CTO of the open source project of the same name. I spend about an hour every week taking a look at issues, taking a look at questions that have been asked on the chat and the news around Uno platform and .NET in general, and battling with Visual Studio when that happens, because I'm trying out with newer versions of Visual Studio. I wasn't trying to get to preview 6 of Visual Studio this week, but probably will for next week. Taking a look at all those new features that are coming up with Visual Studio. This week we're going to take a look at 2 issues. The first one being drop-down elements that are not showing the right fonts when in data grid, but probably not just in data grid, but in general. And we're going to take a look at that one specifically. And there's another one with current UI culture that's being reset to the browser's default language. And we're going to take a look and see if we can troubleshoot that. So in the news lately about Uno platform, there was an update with and that we worked on during the stream a few weeks ago, which is the support of the memory leaks improvements. And there were actually a few issues linked all together, and now we do have additional validations as a regression test that we didn't have before inside of Uno to make sure that we're not leaking anymore, at least for the scenarios that have been raised. And something that comes up often is the questions around the data template pooling, and I think we do have parts of documentation that are talking about this. Framework template pool. There's a little bit about this at the end about the Uno UI performance, and probably you should be adding some more information about this. But framework template pool is basically something that looks like this. When you're in the Uno platform and you're creating a control or a button or anything that has a content presenter. So let's go. Content control and content presenter. So let's go down to a snippet, I think at the end, so control template here. And you can see here that we have a content control. And what happens is that when you're creating a control here, what's inside of the control template here, so the border inside of the content control, if you're making if you're creating an instance of that control and creating a second instance of that control, and removing the previous one, what will happen is that we're assuming inside of Uno, if you've created the control that way, is that we can reuse the instances of the top level element that is inside of the control template in another version of the same control. And the reason we're doing this, by default at least, and it's something that you can disable, is that it makes it a lot faster to recreate controls of the same type. So for instance, you create a button on a specific page, and then you close that page, reopen that page again. We're going to be reusing the style and the template that was materialized for that control, so that it goes faster. Now, it can have some effects, and it can look like a leak in a sense, because we're creating instance of controls, and say you create 10 controls, 10 buttons, and those 10 button instances, if you're removing them from the tree and then collecting them, they're going to stay alive for a while. And when I'm saying a while, I'm saying about a minute or so. Now let's go take a look at what that means by collecting. So if you go to framework template pool, we're going to get to that implementation of the framework template pool. If Visual Studio wants to select something, there you go. So the framework template pool is that class, and it's something that's basically behind data templates and control templates. And automatically you're going to get anything that is beyond a content control that will automatically use and recycle items inside of a framework template pool. And by default, the pooling is set for time to live of about 1 minute. So if a template stays 1 minute, is recycled, it will stay 1 minute in the pool. And then if another control that uses the same template is created again, it will reuse that template that comes from the pool. Otherwise, it will get discarded. You can also disable the pooling altogether if you're finding issues around this. So for instance, you can set framework template pool dot is pooling enabled and set it to false. And then we also have a feature that's called a high memory threshold, and the template pool is also aware of the memory being used in the app. And if the memory usage is too high, then if we're pooling too many instances, then we're going to flush those instances sooner than a minute, because maybe the memory is too high, so it needs to go down below. So that's the idea behind the framework template pool. Windows WinUI doesn't do this, and I think there were a while back discussions around adding something like this, but it had some effects. I don't know where exactly in the framework, so it wasn't enabled, but this is enabled by default in Uno. So if you want to disable it, you can use the framework template pooling enabled property here. I see Jose is here, as always. Thank you for joining. If you have questions, please ask away. So let's take a look at our first issue, which is the drop-down element font rendering and data grid ComboBox here. We're going to try to find out if we can replicate that issue here. So for this, what could we do? I think we could do, I don't know if there's a, yeah, we can probably take this as a sample here. We're going to try to reproduce this in the playground. So let's see here. So it's not controls. So we want to have a data grid. So I think it's item source. We're going to create a small item source that we have here. Let's call it my source. It's just going to be a top level item. And actually I'm going to be returning to the root so that we have some data that we can quickly get to. Okay. And so in here, what we want to have is a list of namespaces. And I don't remember the list of namespaces by heart. So let's go take a look at those ones. Uno platform, playground, GitHub. And we want to go into the playgrounds code, and then we can search for MUXC. It's here, and we can find that Microsoft Toolkit UWP UI is MTUC. So let's go and use MTUC as the prefix. And we should be having a data grid here that's mostly empty because there's nothing in it. I would think that it's title, maybe. Dan, so yes, I don't remember it by heart, but no, I don't remember all the namespaces that do exist. Okay, so data grid text column, it's not that, so let's go find that out. It is, we can find that. Okay, no, it's not that one. We want to find the version that's coming from. So let's search for data grids community toolkits. And we're going to search for some samples. I don't remember the names for that. So data grids, so we can have customizing. So it's header. There you go. So we have a header for data grid. So we should be having test here. That's good. And test 1, test 2, test 3. Okay. And our font family, let's use something like new. Okay, so we can see that the font are changing in columns. It's yes, Pedro, it's definitely items the source. I wrote it a bit too fast. So we're changing the font family of the data grid, and we can see that it changes the font family of the whole columns. So that's what we wanted. And then what we want here is to determine if the font family of the data grid here changes the font family of the rest. So that would be something interesting here. So let's go for, so do you have a preferred, maybe, let's go for Comic Sans. I think it is. It's comic? I don't remember. So go for a character map. Then we get Comic Sans. Is it Comic Sans? Comic Sans MS. There you go. And we're going to be removing the X-bind. Okay, so the expectation here is that the font family for this column here should be something different. So we're going to be using a new one. So in here we have tips. So let's go, if I use tips here, what does it show? Nothing, because it's tips. And probably it doesn't work because it's single objects. So we probably need to do additional objects here. So we have test one. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing for the other objects. Hey McNets, no, it's ComboBox, but not the same ComboBox. So it's not the exact same issue that we had before. This one, we're going to take a look at why fonts are not replicated properly when opening a ComboBox. Actually, I'm doing ComboBox, but maybe it's something that we can take a look at just by a simple ComboBox first. So let me save that for now. Maybe I can simplify the issue instead of going for a data grid altogether. So let's go with, I think we have a sample for ComboBox. It already uses fonts here. So let's say that I change the font family here, and I use not Tahoma, Comic Sans MS. What do I get? Okay, so I do get Sego UI. Okay, so you can see here that the font family here used, so the font family used in ComboBox is the right one because the text that is being displayed here is the right one. So it uses the dreaded Comic Sans. But the pop-up that shows up, which has a beautiful tint here, because you can see that it uses the background. So it uses a kind of acrylic. So that's good. Thank you, Martin, who implemented that feature. We're going to try to find out why the font family that's provided here is not replicating here. So first, what we need to know is that does it work with Windows? So if I take the same content here and I paste it in this application. So just to be sure, I hope this is not going to fail. No, it doesn't. Okay. So sometimes it does fail because sometimes that application doesn't handle the copy pasting from another machine. So so McNets, yeah. So what you see here is that it uses the text is used to display the font family for the text box that's below. But what I want to see is each item is supposed to be using Comic Sans MS because I set it as the font family of the ComboBox altogether. So let's try to find out if that's doing the right thing. So we have our X name here. Just going to be adding some additional items here. Does string work? I don't know. It does. Okay. Okay, so we can see that oh, there you go. So I did copy paste inside and it doesn't work. Okay, so that's the bug. So we can see quickly and the app is failing. Maybe if I do copy paste something else, it will stop. No, it doesn't. Okay. We could see very quickly that the pop-up was actually showing the font using Comic Sans, and that is because the font family is inheriting from the top level of the pop-up here, and that's not happening. So let's try to figure out what's happening here, and we're going to dig into a little bit of the ComboBox to see if we can get something interesting there. So the first thing that we're going to do is create a do we create a runtime test already, or if we do create a simple test, let's create a runtime test already. So to do this, we're going to go to test project, and we're going to create a control. I think we have a ComboBox somewhere. There you go. We have ComboBox. And for this one, we are going to create a new test. We have a few tests here with collection reset, but that's not what we're looking for. And we're going to call that when font family inherits. Okay, so we do have a ComboBox. We can create an observable collection with a few items in there. We're setting the item source to the system under test. We can see that the ComboBox was set to the content helper, so it's going to show on the side of the app. And then we're going to set a specific font to it. So the interesting thing here would be that we need to use a custom font. So let's use a font that's available on Windows for now, but we may need to change that afterwards. So font family is going to be let's go for Korean U, because that one is easy. Okay, so what we expect is that the font family that's set on the ComboBox should be on the items that are materialized here for each individual items of the ComboBox. So the assertion would be that if we get the items, so the individual containers of the ComboBox. So when you're displaying items in a ComboBox, there's a notion of containers, and each container should be having inheritance set properly. So we're gonna try to pick the values that are available from those containers. So have we tried the new project format with runtime tests? What do you mean new project format? Is that because that one is using the SDK format here, so maybe it's something different that you're meaning? Dan, so we're expecting sut.fontFamily. Let's go for source directly, and then we're gonna get container from index. We can take the first one. And the container is supposed to be something that's a dependency object. Have we tried the project without the runtime test format, without the share project? Well, this is not a share project. So the runtime test itself is a separate project, but the sample app itself continues. It has a share project here. So maybe that's what you're talking about. So that one, no, it's still not a share project, and we're actually using the fact that it's not a share that it's not a class library, because there are specific tests that are based on that. But we probably could be reducing that and move to a separate assembly. No, the runtime tests here are really in a separate assembly, and those are using the new path format, which is MS Apex with the name Uno UI runtime tests as the base. Okay, so the container from index should be a content control. And that content control should have a font family. And the source should be the same as the font family source here. So that would be that. So we need to make sure that the ComboBox is closed properly, just to make sure that if there are some different things that are happening. So that is one of the pieces that we do during the test, to make sure that we're not lingering pop-ups around. So there we go. So let's try to build this one. So I waited a bit. So I hope that we're not going to get the same issues that we had last week. And I think we do have the same issue. You can see that the build is not starting. And it feels like it's again a problem on NuGet, and I hope this is only a problem that I do have with my own version, on the version that is installed here. Let's kill a little bit of MS build. I do not have any MS build, okay, and the build cannot stop. That's also annoying. Yeah, okay, it doesn't cancel. So let's try something different. I'm gonna restart Visual Studio again. I haven't tried the next version of Visual Studio Preview, so Preview 6. I hope this one is fixed. If it's not, I'm probably going to have to open a feedback about it. I'm all on feedback lately, trying to open as much feedback as I can. I actually opened an issue that I had for a very long time. If I do this, copy paste, I'm going to get this dialog box. And I thought it was because I'm running inside of a remote desktop. So the machine that you're seeing is a remote desktop 2. But for some reason, the tester that's on the Microsoft side is not able to reproduce it, even if it's running on a remote machine. So maybe does any one of you who's on the stream having the same issue as I am? So if you open the folder view and then you do a copy path, does it fail the same way for you? Because for me it happens all the same time. It copies the content though. That's the interesting thing. It still works, but it fails to it continues to show the error message. Okay, so let's open it again. We're going to do a rebuild. Maybe this time it'll help. So last week I talked about the fact that we had the Visual Studio. We disabled what is called the shared compiler in Visual Studio. Well, actually, in the shared C# compiler, and turns out it was for a very long-standing issue that got fixed, or partially fixed. I'm not sure exactly. So we got some time to fix this, and that means that now, if the build actually works, if it wants to. Oh, there you go. It works. Okay, so Andres is not reproducing it. Okay. Okay, so maybe it's my version of VS. Maybe I do have something odd that's on my machine. Oh, maybe it's because I'm connected to multiple remote desktop machines. I don't know. Maybe it's that. But anyways, it's happening, and because it's a COM error that shows up, it's very difficult to debug, because the actual error that's coming from underneath is not the right one. So yeah, difficult to troubleshoot. Okay, at least for some of you it's working properly, so it's probably just me. Yeah, okay, so let's take a look. I was talking about the fact that we have we have changed the support for VBCS compiler, and now we can see that instead of creating new instances of csc.exe, we're actually using VBCS compiler.exe. And there's a very interesting difference between the two. So that VBCS compiler is something that stays alive for a specific solution. So when you're building, Visual Studio is sending compilations to that file, to that instance, and that prevents, well, that avoids the process to reload the same assemblies multiple times. And that's what happens. So let's say you're compiling against .NET 7, and the SDK has many assemblies that are present. And what will happen then is that all the assemblies that are coming from the SDK are going to be kept in memory, and the process is going to be reusing those multiple times for every project that builds in the solution. And when you're not doing anything and you're using all standard stuff, this is what's happening already. But we're not doing the exact same thing. So we were fiddling around with many things around the framework, and we actually broke that behavior. So now it's back. So I'm going to change quickly the sources here. That's because I'm running a WinUI version of the build. So let me change that very quickly. Just going to disable that one. Okay, let's try again. So Pedro is saying something that I found at my home. It doesn't work when connected to a Wi-Fi connection. Oh, but it works. It works on 2.4. That's very odd. Okay, the Wi-Fi band is not supposed to change anything, but okay. That is interesting though. So if you're saying that you're not able to connect to the Mac build host in that long, if you have errors that are showing up, error messages, that would be interesting to raise to Microsoft. I mean, it's working generally okay lately, and they've been responsive now that Maui has been released. They're now working on some longer standing issues, and they actually fixed one issue, which was that when you have a solution with multiple projects inside, if you don't disable the Mac connection for all projects but the head, then the Mac connection would fail randomly in between. So, and that issue is going to be fixed or going to be fixed in some Visual Studio version that's coming up. So that's very good. So they are listening. Okay, so we have our font family inherits. So it's probably still loading a few things here. There's TP request. I'm probably going to be disabling again the connection to the remote control host. Yeah. So yeah, connection. Yeah, so not being able to reproduce something is difficult, but yeah, I get it. Sometimes it's environmental. So you have something installed on your machine, or sometimes something on your network. I know someone that has I think it's not an LG washing machine, but for some reason the washing machine appears in the list of Macs, and it kind of behaves curiously. So maybe it's it could be something related to that kind of environmental thing. Okay, so we are running, and we can see here that we have null in our font family inherits, but maybe it's because we don't have a container. So let's go and see what we do have in our container. Oh, we can see that we have not opened. So maybe we do need to open the ComboBox. So let's make sure that we do open the ComboBox first. So we're going to be opening this drop down. So we do need to do, yep, drop down open. So let's leave dangerously and see if we can have the hot reload apply something. No, it doesn't work. Okay, so let's restart. We have way too much sources in there, so hot reload's is a bit lost with that many changes. Okay, so we do have still have a BCS compiler running. So and going back to this, and it's very important because it's all about compiling faster. And I think do we have that here? Oh, I forgot to add that property that disables analyzers. So we're going to do that just right after. Actually, let's do it right now. Otherwise, I will be forgetting about it. So in the cross targeting override at the end of the file, there's a new property. Well, that one is a copy, so I need to take the original one. So at the end of the file, we do have optimize implicitly triggered build. And that one, if you uncomment it, it will disable analyzers during your debug session. So you're going to be compiling faster. So it's a little trick from the Roslyn team. That's quite interesting. So we're still in WebSocket stuff, and we're going to change that as well here. So we go faster. So in the project file, we have something that is called the no, it's not that file. I think it's the other one. We have a project that is called remote control. We're going to comment that one out so we don't spend too much time waiting while you're on the stream, because it's not particularly important for you to watch Visual Studio unfold. Okay, so what do we have now? So our pop-up should have been opened. I can't see it for now because I'm stopped, but let's see what we do have now. in that. Okay, so we don't have any container, which is a problem. Do we have anything in the index? We don't have anything in the index, so that's a problem. Is the pop-up opened? Let's see if I restart the test again. Do I have my pop-up showing up? The pop-up is not showing up. So did I forget about something? So let's check the previous tests. No, the drop-down is supposed to be open, so maybe I'm not waiting for it enough. Well, let's do it twice. So we're going to wait for idle in between, so we can see that the pop-up stays open, and we're not going to close it at the end. So what is it complaining about? So the error list is complaining about, oh, that's a lot of errors. Okay, so it looks like it's not running some of the generators for some reason. Yeah, okay, so not for this time. Hot reload is such a complex piece of tech, and you know, it works well when you don't touch too much of the project system. But when you do, and you have cross targeting, and you have custom projects and custom targets for lots of things that running, and you have in that case the analyzers, the generators are built inside of the solution. Sometimes it just messes up everything because the generators are not available. It could be something like that the generators were not available when we opened the solution the first time, so that the hot reload didn't pick them up. Could be something like that. So it works better when you're not building your own stuff, but when you're building your own generators inside the same solution, it's not a good experience. Okay, so there we go. So it goes a bit faster. Okay, so we have the pop-up opened. That's good. Now it's not closed, which is fine as well. So now we're going to see if the container from index is actually returning something. So is it returning something? Okay, so we do have a ComboBox item. So we needed to wait for idle for the pop-up to actually show up and give us something in the ComboBox item. So now we do have a ComboBox item. And now we can go and take a look at the contents of that ComboBox item and see what we do get inside. So if we search for hello, morning for coffee. Thanks for joining. So we have to look for our font family property, which is here. And it's set to XAML auto font family. Okay, so that's interesting. So that means that the item that's displayed, so the first one in that context here, really is something showing something interesting. So, but we can see that the font family that's used here is not inheriting from Corenu that was set for the header of the control that was set on the outer side. So we're going to try to figure out where that particular connection is dropped. And what we can see here is, actually, it's all about the structure of a ComboBox. So a ComboBox is something that's it's a control that's a bit different from the others. The items that you're placing inside are part of a piece of the tree that's not a child of the ComboBox control itself. So it's something that is set inside of a pop-up, and a pop-up is generally set to be displayed at the top level. So inheritance doesn't go automatically between controls like this. So it may be that we need to forward individual properties that are inherited manually. So let's see what we can find here. So for ComboBox, let's go find the implementation, and we're going to try to figure out if there's something that we're missing here to propagate some of the properties that are missing for that specific control. So we're going to go to Uno UI, then in the UI XAML, let's search for ComboBox. And in ComboBox, we do have a lot of things, But specifically, we should be having something that is called a layouter. That's the placement, but that's not the one. So let's search for the pop-up. I think we have a pop-up somewhere. So the full screen pop-up. So we have an eye pop-up here. We're searching for the pop-up. We're searching for the border that's inside of the pop-up. Are we binding elements? So we're binding to equivalent property. So okay, we're doing some of the things here. We're binding the pop-up to a light dismiss overlay mode that's coming from the current control, but probably we're not propagating some of the other properties that should be. So for instance, we can see that we're and so Darren's saying, can you just throw in it is editable support for WASM while you're there? Is it editable for ComboBox, you mean? Because if it's that, I can overlay a text box on it and it will just work. Huh? Something like that. Is that what you want? So let's continue with this. So let's see if there are there fonts. So okay, there's enough font support here. So my guess would be that if we're propagating some properties here already, we could probably propagate some others. So let's see if we can propagate font family. Just that one for now. So there are a few other properties that we need to propagate, like foreground color, font family, actually many of the inherited properties. There are ways to know about those, so we're going to try to do something about that. But Darren, for the editable stuff, make sure to open an issue about it. I don't think we do have an issue about it. ComboBox is editable. Let's take a look quickly. But yeah, that would be an interesting feature to implement. Oh, there you go. It's not implemented. Okay, so someone already flagged it. So make sure to upvote it so that we can know that that you're interested in it. Okay, so I have added font family here. Now I want to make sure that we're going to get the right content. So we're going to change that one to take a look for all the properties that are on that object, on that control that are inheritable. So we're going to be doing all of them at once and not just do the ones that we do know of. Okay, so that's the one. So we have XAML auto font family again that is bound to the pop-up. So that's not good enough. We're probably going to be having to modify a few more things. So we have the content presenter here. How are we doing things here? So we have ComboBox item. We're modifying the selected item for some reason. Modifying the content presenter of the item directly. So that's not the one. We have the item presenter. Okay, so that's not enough. That means that we're going to have to do a few more tricks around this, because we're applying properties to the pop-up, but that's not a property that's existing on pop-up. So we're going to have to adjust. Okay, so I don't think we do have a prepare item for container. Okay, we don't. So let's do that. So when we have items that are showing up on the for individual controls, we have an override that we can use, which is not this one. Prepare item container, prepare container for item override. And this method is invoked every time there's an item that's about to be displayed for a list. So that's the context, that's the case that we have right now, which is a control, which is the control that we're manipulating currently. And there's the same one, which is the clear container for item override, and that one is doing the same thing, which is doing the opposite thing of the first one, which is when an item is about to be removed from the list. And then what we're going to do, just very bluntly, we're going to say if element is a content control, We're just going to set, just to see if it works, we're going to set the font family of that control to the font family of the combo box that we currently have. And so in general, the propagation is automatically done because items that are part of the same tree and have the same parent are automatically inheriting properties that are coming from their parent. But in that context, because the items are part of a different tree, which is the one that is coming from the pop-up, then the inheritance doesn't happen. So we need to do it manually. And that's one of the reasons we need to write that kind of thing here. So I see English conversation is here. Hello. Thanks for joining. We're working on a ComboBox issue where the font family that's set on the ComboBox does not happen to flow through to the items that are shown when the ComboBox opens. So we're about to test that setting the font family in the prepare item container override is actually doing what it's supposed to be doing. And what did I do? Probably broke something. Oh, fixing the formatting. There you go. And we should be good to go just after that. Okay, so the next issue we're going to look at is somehow different, which is going to be around localization in the browser. And it's something that we've been making changes around, especially in the latest version of the Bootstrapper. We're now supporting satellite assemblies. So if you're localizing content using embedded resources, this is something that you want to upgrade for, where the satellite assemblies are going to be downloaded automatically to your app as it loads up. Okay. So, oh, wow. First time. There you go. Okay, so overriding the font family in a prepare for a container item prepare container for item override is good enough. That means that every item container that's created for the combo box is now having the right font applied to it because it's been inherited from the combo box that's outside. So that's pretty good. So now it does work. So now what we need to do, just to make sure that it actually works correctly, we're going to be needing to do it for the whole set of properties that do exist. And we're going to have to clear those values again. So I think we do have internally a set of helpers that allow to get those kind of properties. So I think it's dependency property. Now we have a set of internal helpers that do get that. So we have get properties for type. And the type is this, like get type. And we're going to try to find all the inherited properties, and we're going to set the values. So coming from the current property that we have on the current object to the new one. So to get that, we have to filter the properties. Get metadata for the current type. So type. This get type, and we do have something that is called a framework property metadata. And in that framework property metadata, we can know if inherited, if I remember correctly. No, it's on metadata, maybe. Metadata, no, it's not there. Where do I have is logical tree? Or maybe it's a property somewhere. Let's go take a look at the framework property metadata because I don't remember. So we have framework property metadata. We have options. Oh, that's probably options. Options, there you go. And we have has, inherits. There you go. It says if the property is inherited, then we're going to do something about it. So what we need to take is the property from the current control. So this is the current object, and then we're going to apply that to a property of the same name on the content control. So to do this, we're going to say content control, so dependency property, and we're going to say get property. So for the type of the object, so we're going to say content control.get type. And we want a property of the same name that's coming from the ComboBox. So we're going to do property.name. So it's the container property. And what we're going to do is to set the value. So we know that we're on CC, so the content control. We're going to set value using the property that we just got. And we're going to get the value of the property that's coming from our cells, which is the ComboBox. And we're going to take the property that comes from here. So properties are probably a bit difficult. So let's call it ComboBox property. So we have an easy to read name. Okay. So you want me to use that one. Okay, so get value is not available for some reason. Not too sure why. Let's use get value like this. That should be enough. Okay, so we're going to get the value of the ComboBox property that we got from this guy here. So which is the same property, which is an inherited property. So we're going to iterate on all those properties. So we're going to have foreground, font family, font size, all of the other properties. So we're going to put a breakpoint here, and you're going to see that we have quite a few of them. So that's the first one. And I'm just going to copy paste the code for now, but it's the same thing here. So when we're removing items, we're going to have to clear the value. We're going to have to clear the value of the container property because it exists, and we set the value. We explicitly set a value on that object. So clear value is good enough at this point. Okay. Oh, and we're going to change one. We're going to make an additional test. Not in content presenter, ComboBox. We're going to set a font size, for instance. And we're going to be validating that the font size is set properly. Font size. Let's put a very large size. We're going to validate that in here. It is not null. We do want a container. So Pedro asks, is it a good idea to cache the this.getType result? In general, getType is an intrinsic, so it's not something that is costly that much. It's pretty much the same as doing instance of, if I remember correctly. So generally not. But if you're making manipulations to to the resulting type, to calling methods on the get type, yeah, it could make sense to cache the result of those returning values. Okay, so we have a container here that is not supposed to be null, and then we're testing for the font size. and those are supposed to be equal. Now, Pedro, you're asking a question about gate type. Is it something that you've seen being slow somewhere, or for any other type of scenario? I'm interested because in general, it's not supposed to be a problem. I mean, technically, the framework is doing a get type when you do is like this. So when you do is, it's going to be validating that the type returned by get metadata is actually a type of framework property metadata. So it's going to do the same kind of manipulation. So maybe there's a scenario that I don't know of that is slower by doing get type. Okay, so we're at the samples Zapskia, which is good. And let's see. It's curious that there's a lag here. It looks like it's. I wonder if it's because of the materialization of the list. It could be something like that. It takes a while to build. Okay, so let's run. And do we have a problem here? Okay, so we can see that we're preparing containers. So the property that we're manipulating is keyboard focus navigation. So this one looks like it's inherited. We have hit test visibility, bubbling. Those are internal properties. Subscribe to event handler 2. Data context supposed to be inheriting. Templated parent. Focus when disabled. So maybe there's some that may not need to be propagated, but so we have the is enabled. Also interesting. Foreground. Font weight. So all the font size. Okay, there you go. So that's pretty good. Now let's see if we run the whole thing. Does it work properly? It does, and we have a super huge combo box. And if we navigate to something else, do we get the clear container called? It doesn't look like it's called, so maybe it's falling into the case of reuse here. So I was talking about framework template pooling, so maybe it's related to the pooling and it's not clearing the items properly at that point. So there's a little bit of validation here that needs to be done. Okay, so we have the font family and font size that are validated and that are actually set properly. So that's good. Okay, so there we go. We have one less bug. So that's pretty good. We're probably going to be having to validate that a bit more because there are some properties that may not need to be inherited, like data context and template parent, but still interesting. Okay, so let's push that one for now. Now let's go take a look at the other issue. We have about 15 minutes or so. So the second issue is about the current UI culture that gets reset to the default browser's language. So setting the current UI culture, current thread culture, or application language override to a specific culture keeps the change only during blocks of code that is assignment occur, and right after the culture is set back to the default browser's language. Okay. So that looks like an issue with synchronization contexts, and that could be a problem. So let's see if we can have something. So there's a repro. So let's take a look at the repro. I can download it right away. And let's take a look at that sample right away. So let's try first to see if it actually does repro. which may be which is the first thing that that needs to be validated. Okay, so it wasn't project, didn't load because Microsoft Web SDK cannot be found. That's interesting. Why is that? That's very curious. Nope, that's not that. That there definitely looks like something that broke here. So definitely not that. Well, that's pretty interesting. Is it something with the whole Visual Studio? With maybe. So that kind of error message comes up when when some pieces of Visual Studio are breaking up, but I don't see why that could happen here. There's a global JSON, so maybe that's related to global JSON. Okay, so maybe it's the global JSON. So what's inside that one? Okay, so it uses an older version of the well, not too, it's an older version, so maybe it's that. That was it. Okay, so for some reason, probably because I don't have that version of the .NET SDK. Yeah, that's correct. That's why I don't have that. I don't have that SDK, so that's probably why. Okay, so let's see what that sample app does. So it's using Net5. It's not supposed to be a problem. It's using a fairly recent bootstrapper as well, so that should be good. Okay, so I just need to change one small thing here because in my machines the HTTPS is not working properly. I don't know why that is, but it's probably related to some configuration on my side. Maybe it's the same as the clipboard issue. Who knows? Okay, so ES should be ES, and okay. I'm not sure what I'm looking at, but let's see. Let's go dig into that the specific issue. Okay, so we're setting the current culture thread here. Setting the primary language override. So when we're setting the primary language override, we're explicitly setting this to yes. So maybe it's something else. I don't see why that would change, but so let's change that. So let's put the application primary language override as a ES at the first, and let's see when we do get the loaded event if it stays that way. Okay, so it stays that way first, so there's no problem there. So maybe it's related to something else. So let's go back to the issue. Maybe there's something that I missed. So there's a checkbox, but I don't know what the checkbox does. What is it? What is it linked to? Checkbox is binding to VMA. And it's using, okay, so it's setting the value for the model to be ES. Okay, so that I understand. So it's supposed to be changing the value when the checkbox is updating. Okay, so let's see. it really is updating properly, I would guess. So M is about that. Let's see if I set it from here. From A. Stays set the right way by the looks of it. The thing is that if ES is defined to something else, maybe that's the issue. I'm not too sure, because it looks like, to me, it looks like it's working properly. So we're gonna have to ask the original poster about that specific issue. I'm not seeing any problem here. So one thing that we do know is that when we're setting a specific culture here, it doesn't stay. It's not persisted. So if you're setting that value from, let's say, your settings or storage or something like that, doesn't stay, and while when using an actual WinUI application, it does. But in here, I'm not sure exactly what would be the issue, because it looks to me that it's working properly. So unless I've seen something different. Yeah, we're setting the culture info. We're setting the culture, current culture to the right values. So it's working properly. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so you see here they came back to in US. Okay, so that's pretty interesting. So it takes a while to actually have the issue. Yeah, so it could be that Yosef, it could be that because if you're setting yes specifically, the primary language override is going to be setting ES explicitly to current culture. So that's why it doesn't become ES. I'm not sure exactly why that happens. Maybe it's related to something else. Maybe Windows does not allow for setting generic cultures. Could be something like that. But anyways, that's the issue. Now, what is interesting is that it took a while for ENUS to become, it was ENUS, no, ES at the beginning, but after a while, it became ENUS. So I wonder, okay, let's add a small button. We're gonna try to poke the bear to see if we can get something interesting there. So let's make a button. We're gonna make it do something. So we're gonna try to do something like garbage collection or something like that. See if it helps or it does something different. So let's go for. So it looks like it may have been a GC collect. So let's go for that. Okay, so in there, no, still not doing anything here. Okay, so what could it be? So it's not about, maybe is it because we refreshed the app? So we're doing something here, doesn't do anything. So something ran that caused the or maybe it is hot reload related somehow. No, that's not that. That is very interesting. Let's try with a timer, maybe. Let's create a timer. So that is coming from somewhere else in general. So if it's a system thread timer, system threading timer, there you go. And we're going to be doing a I don't know what, to be honest. Actually, we're gonna be setting the thread again. And there's no state. We're gonna set it to run for 100 milliseconds and a period of timeout at infinite, so that it runs only once. So it would I would guess that if it gets reset, it means that we're executing something that's not supposed to happen, like a maybe a background thread or something that resets the current culture to something else. So maybe let's do a thread pool, maybe. Queue user work item. We got to do the same thing here. So we're trying with a timer. Timer didn't do anything. GC collect didn't do anything. Oh, there you go. We have it. It's because of the thread pool. Okay, so it's called, so it is called, but it is called by the thread pool. So when it's changed, it may be that for some reason it's trying to think. So a background thread is supposed to be having its own culture, but because we're not actually having threading enabled in WebAssembly, it may be that the background thread is still emulating its original behavior of setting the culture to something else. And so maybe the default environment culture for some reason, and then it never sets it back. That is interesting. That means that we're going to have to do something about it and set the culture again to what we set originally. That explains so much, because we've been chasing an issue that looks like this for a while, and I wonder if tasks do have the same behavior. So let's make a task.run instead. Let's do the same thing with task.run, and I wouldn't be surprised if it does the same thing, because task.run uses a thread pool behind, so maybe not exactly that thread pool, but a similar one. There you go. Does the same thing. So at the and that's interesting, because it only happens when exiting the task.run. So there's probably something in the runtime that on the exit of the thread pool that resets the value. So we can see here that it's actually set to 3. So that means that we executed that line and that the current culture name was the right one. But when we got out, then it got changed to something else. And then when we click again the hello, then we get to ENUS. Okay, so that behavior is something that comes from the runtime. Let's go dig into runtime. That's the only thing to do. Okay, so to find out what the runtime may do here, I think the lowest form of threading that we can find is probably just the thread pool. So we're just going to go and decompile the app's files directly, so that we don't have to fiddle around and trying to figure out what is the right version of the runtime we need to pick up. So we're going to go inside the dist folder and the manage folder, and we're going to be going into the system.private core lib. Do I have an spy here? I think I do have a spy opened. There it is. Okay, so we do have system private core lib, and we're searching for queue user work item. So we're queuing a work item. We're in queuing a work item. Okay, so we may not have the whole thing here because we're going to be in queuing, but we're not doing the right, we're not processing the content. So, so we have the get queue items, queue callback. Okay, so it's done by the runtime underneath. So it may be that we don't have the right stack to be able to understand what is resetting the current thread, the current culture. But just to be sure, let's try to see if we have a culture here. Okay, so it's not expanded. Maybe let's try to see where we're at when we're executing a thread like this. So if we do a write line, I'm just going to show the stack trace here. Just to see who's calling us when we're in there. Okay, so we're being invoked by something that is called execute with thread local, run from, so that one is threading from execution context, so that's not the one. We have execute from thread pool. So we have dispatch. Okay, so the class that we're looking for is thread pool work queue. Thread pool work queue, which is just below. And the method that we're looking for is dispatch. Okay, so the dispatch method is doing a lot of things. It's dispatching work item. It's an assigning work item, reset thread pool thread. What does that do? So it's resetting the data context, the synchronization context, so maybe it's related to the synchronization context. So we have execute from thread pool. So let's go down the rabbit hole of the thread pool. No, it's not that. And we do know that when we're doing it through the thread pool directly, we're not having the issue. So it may be after the dispatch of the work item. So it may be something that's in there. So we have reset thread pool thread. So resetting properties, priorities, and other related things, but that's not that. In there, we're resetting the execution context for the current thread. On values changed. Well, that's a lot of things. I don't know what that does. We're unassigning work item from the queue. Okay, so it may be somewhere in there, but I don't know. So we may have to try to see if we can debug that out. We have a few more minutes. Let's take a look at those. I don't remember if the debugger is able to do this, but let's figure it out. So I do have, I don't have the properties set properly. So let's set those properties. Because the project was created with an older version of Uno. So it doesn't have the properties set, so we can find that. Inspect URI. So we have to set the inspect URI line here. So we need to set that here so that the debugger actually is able to break on breakpoints that are provided by the user. Okay, so we do have a breakpoint here. So let's see. We have our breakpoint that comes from the runtime. And if we back out, where do we go? Okay, so the code is not loaded, but we do have lines, so it may be of interest. I thought that was supported, but for some reason it's not at that point. That could be because the symbols are not provided as public. They're not published properly, so that may be the issue. That's why it's not able to download everything up. Okay, so we have a dispatch. Can we? So I don't know if the runtime is now able to do that. So we're gonna try to see if we can get that watch to run. Okay, so we can see that the current thread is actually giving the right value. Oh, there you go. So you can see when we got out of the callback, we got it to reset. Okay, so it's in somewhere in the dispatch. So if I get out, if it wants to. Okay, so try to download something, but so I'm still in the dispatch method, and for now it's still well, it's now ENUS, so it's not useful. So I have to restart. Okay, so let's restart. So I'm out of time, but that is interesting. So we do know now that it actually is an UNO issue, a runtime issue. So we're going to have to either work around it or fix the issue in the runtime, and that's going to be pretty interesting to figure out. So I hope it was interesting, that session, so that you can find. And if you're watching on the recordings, thank you. And if you have the chance for next time, join us join us live, so we can ask questions, we can have a discussion, and enhance the UNO platform altogether. So until then, happy coding and see you next week. Bye for now.